Hi folks, it's James from Community Legal Centres Queensland. Thanks for tuning in for another one of our webinars for Community Legal Centre staff and volunteers and friends. This one looking at legal health check pathways for community legal centres. Can I begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet? Sue and I are at the Community Legal Centres Queensland office south of the Brisbane River, so acknowledge the Yagara people as the traditional custodians of this land. We've got people tuning in from across Australia, and so we acknowledge that we all stand on Aboriginal land, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander land. Before I hand over to Sue to talk to us about the great work that's happening in the legal health check world, a couple of housekeeping things. We emailed around a copy of the PowerPoint presentation a couple of hours ago, so you should have that. You should also be able to access it from the handout section of the GoToWebinar control panel. We're hoping to record this webinar if the technology will allow us to do that, and we'll email around some information if we're able to do that in the next day or two. Practitioners from Western Australia can claim a CPD point under your kind of old school program over there. We'll email around information about how you can claim that point, which has been granted, accredited, whatever the word is, from the Community Legal Centres Association of WA, and we thank them for doing that and working with us in this space. A couple of ways that you can ask questions as the webinar goes. You can type a question into the questions box, and I think that Sue might actually ask you to do that at a couple of points through the presentation. The other way that you can ask a question is press that button that looks like a hand on your control panel. You'll see something that looks like a hand going up here. We'll be able to unmute your microphone and you'll be able to ask your question directly. That's the boring housekeeping stuff. Let's get into the exciting content stuff. So Sue Garlick is here, the Deputy Director of Law Right, formerly known as the Queensland Public Interest Law Clearinghouse. Sue's been leading an amazing effort over several years looking at how legal health checks can be used in community legal centres, in community organisations, in all kinds of innovative ways to support people, to support our clients, to better understand the types of legal problems they have and to better link them with the appropriate services. It's fantastic work. We're really supportive of it, and it's great to have Sue speaking to us about legal health check pathways for CLCs. Thanks, Sue.
Thanks, James. Hello, everyone, on this Wednesday afternoon. I'm going to try to do this as interactively as I can with this within this format, and so in order to do so, I'm making lots of assumptions and hoping you've all got online to the Legal Health Check website and looked at the videos, and if you haven't, you don't need to confess, but it's worth a look because that really will give you a fair crack at the basics, even though keep in mind that those videos were aimed at community workers. So, and I've just seen that resources is spelt wrongly in our new logo, so I'll have to work on that. How do I? Oh, okay. So that's my details if you want to be in contact with me. And here's the why are you here. I'm going to assume a few things, that you're from a CLC, that you want to really connect more effectively with local and community health organisations, so that you can meet the clients and assist the clients that you want to help, because that's where they are connecting. And you also might be interested in trying to assist multiple needs clients. These kinds of clients are given all sorts of words in all sorts of literature. Intersectionality is a horrible one, and multiple legal needs. These are the people who are I think it's 9% of the population who use 65% of the resources, or New Zealand has gone to the 80-20 rule. It's the 20% of clients that cost the government 80% of the money. So, and some of these resources are very suitable for that kind of client group. Another way to think about it is you're making really intentional, effective connections with your chosen client group, and you're doing it through these, again, they have different names, trusted intermediaries, frontline workers, problem notices, these community staff that see the client first and are dealing with other issues in their lives. And these resources are regardless of whether the style or the mechanics of your outreach or your service where you find the client. So whether your client comes into your centre, or you go out to the client, or you're embedded in another organisation, that's that's not what we're discussing here. So first of all, I'm going to give you a bit of a snapshot of the resources that already exist. And these are all on the Legal Health Check website, which is jointly run by ourselves and NACLIC. There are different legal health checks on that site. There are 4 easy to absorb tutorial videos. There are postcards and posters and other resources. And as far as we can see, about 40 CLCs around Australia use these resources in one way or another to different depths in those CLCs. So, like a good teacher, I'm going to check in on what you might have learned from having looked at those videos. And here's my first question. So, if you think you know the answer, you can quickly type it in. Can we see that just come up? So this quiz is also available on the site, and you might have come across it and already know the answers. So the first question is, how many new and different legal problems is a vulnerable client likely to have each year? Is it A, none, B, 1, C, 3, or D, 5? How many different legal issues do they have? We got any answers there?
So just a reminder that to type that into the chat box on your GoToWebinar control panel.
Anyone willing to hazard a guess? Yes, we've got a few. Is that right? Yep. Okay, some people are saying 5, some people are saying 3. Any other takers? Another 5. Well, we certainly have clients that we see 5 or even 9 at a shot, but the standard answer is 3. So you can rely on a well-evidenced research that the most vulnerable clients have at least 3 legal issues. Okay, here's the next question. It's got an A, B, or C answer. A legal health check is like a needle which immunises vulnerable clients against all their legal problems. B, it's a clear menu which assists clients and community workers to diagnose legal needs. Or C, it's a script for medication which automatically sends vulnerable clients to legal help. Is it a needle? Is it a menu? Is it a script? A, B, C. And we have plenty of people saying B, which is the correct answer. It's a menu. Okay, it doesn't purport to do more than showing people what the issues are and diagnosing them. Here's another one. Now, there's a question there which I'm not going to answer. It's about the role of problem solvers. You can look at that yourself. Here's an easy one. What is a client, a vulnerable client, most likely to say if the community worker asks them, do you want to see a lawyer? Is it A, yes, B, no, or C, don't know? If that's what they get asked, what do they say? We have, a very diverse response. In my experience, people say either no or don't know. Very few clients, when they ask if they want to see a lawyer, if a community worker asks them, say yes. I would say the times when they say yes, it's normally like DV or crime, very easy to recognise legal issues. Okay, last question. I'm sorry I can't throw minties out to people. Which of these statements is the most accurate? A, my client can recognise their legal problems. B, my client can connect to a lawyer by themselves. Or C, my client may benefit if I ask them questions about their legal needs. And we have our participants all getting yes, a yes, so that C is the correct answer, and well done. That was 100% success rate. So some of those quiz questions will give you a bit of sense of the theory, I guess, behind the legal health check, and there is extensive evidence for it which you can look up in your own time on the site. But now I'm looking at the new resources, And I'm going to go through those, and that's going to form the bulk of what we talk about. You can access these resources yourself, and I'll show you how into a minute, but these are the main resources. First of all, we were able to independently evaluate the use of the legal health check in our settings, in our QPILCH settings. Then we were able to give it a bit of a run at 3 other settings in Queensland, and I'll tell you a bit more about those, and evaluate those. Out of those 2 evaluations, we developed best practice guidelines for if you're a legal service and you want to implement this resource, what's the best ideas. So, and then to supplement those best practice guidelines, are training for legal services. There are 2 modules, and they each come with a PowerPoint and a trainer's guide, and they're all on the site. So I'll show you. If you go to the legal, if you go to the, just next slide. That's the front page, or whatever it's called, the home page of the Legal Health Check site, and down there in the bottom right hand corner where the new resources are, so you click that blue button, and if you click that blue button you get this list of resources, and you click further the new resources and you get down to there they all are. So that's how to find the stuff that I'm talking about. But I'm going to give you a bit of a snapshot of what those resources are trying to offer you and the thinking behind them. We're assuming that there are 3 elements of legal service delivery. This is pretty sophisticated analysis, I guess. But the first one over the right is that the client has actual legal needs. Whether they recognise them, whether anyone's looking after them, they actually have a range of actual legal needs, especially if they are really vulnerable clients. Then there's the, at the top left, how you find the client. So that's what we talked about before. Are you an outreach service or a centre-based service? But there's a third element, which is how the client finds you, how they find the path to your door. And that's what these resources are really on about. And our contention is that if you increase what the client knows and can do, then that's how you widen the path to your door. I'm just finding my notes. All right, keep going. So here's 3 ways to widen the path to your door. The first is that you or somebody else, like a community worker, ask the client one more question. You might really have a service that's focused on women's matters or on a particular area of law, or you see a client group because of the community that you serve. But the idea is, if you ask one more question, you will increase the chances that the client will get the legal help they need. A clear example of that from our practice is in our services homeless persons clinic, is that we did some research that confirmed that our clients had fines issues, unpaid fines that they were accumulating to high amounts. In fact, they had over $5,000 on average of fines, but they wouldn't ask us about them. When we used the legal health check, we had 60 to 80% of our clients wanted our help with their fines. In the services where we didn't ask them, it was around the 5 to 8% mark. So this is about pulling out and bringing into the light legal need that the client might not recognise is legal need. There is, I have consistently observed it, I understand it myself, a reluctance by CLCs to increase what they offer clients. So in this age of funding and what you've said you've agreed to do to the funders and what you can actually do with your time, I understand that we're all resource and time poor, but around that issue I think there's some work to be done about asking yourself, what are we trying to achieve for our clients, and particularly our very vulnerable clients. The second thing you may choose to do to increase what the client knows and can do is CLE, and that's been the traditional approach to increasing the client's knowledge about your service and about their legal rights. But you can also, and there's again a fair bit of literature about it, you can teach frontline workers about what the legal needs of their clients are. Again, in this respect, we experimented for a number of years with trying to give frontline workers what I call Law 101. We tried to teach them what a debt was and how they could solve it and what the options were for clients. And consistently, I would say that was not an appropriate use of our time, partly because frontline workers are even busier than we are. They go back into very high intensity workplaces and they don't retain that kind of knowledge. What they need is really concrete, simple resources and questions that they can use that will diagnose legal need. Because we don't want, well, I don't want frontline workers to act as quasi-lawyers. All I want them to do is register together with their client that there is a legal need there. So CLE for community workers has a different feel to it than the CLE that we might deliver direct to clients. The third thing is that you might really train workers much more intentionally to assess and refer the legal need, not just to help the client recognise that's the legal need. You know, if you're in debt, it's not just necessarily because you're a budgeting failure, but because maybe you've been put on a debt that you shouldn't have been and is unlawful. So not just that kind of registering that something is a legal need, but also giving these tools to the workers, the community workers, to assess and refer legal need. Down there in the bottom right-hand corner, we talk about the categories of CLE that helps workers give help, get help, and reinforce help, which are categories that were developed by the Law and Justice Foundation in New South Wales. And they've got a very helpful paper on this topic, and it's really about the CLE for workers that's the most useful is stuff that actually helps them concretely make a referral, make an appointment, or highlight the importance of the legal need. The third thing you can do is get joined up and really create a legal health check pathway for the client that's smooth, that's intentional. This is a really complex process, and the rest of what I talk about is probably going to talk more about this, because this is an agreed and documented referral process for all the legal issues you'd like to address with the client. The question you're asking yourself is, if I had any control over what the community worker was saying to my potential client, what would I want them to say? What would I want them to do? And if asking yourself that question, you think, well, I'd really like them to work with us to get that client into our door knowing that they needed to see us, that's what these resources are trying to offer. I'm just going to whiz through some of the evaluation stats and comments. So the first one, which looked at the legal health check in the QPILCH setting, said yes, it's it was really well accepted as a good concept, a good document, good questions. There was no concern that the questions were confronting for clients, that they were appropriately worded. All of that stuff checked out very well. If you complete the actual form, you'll get an extra 2 legal issues per client, which is significant for a client that has a lot of legal issues and may not realise that they have them. But it doesn't really work if you don't complete the form. So a lot of the works that we've worked with since 2009 have got the idea in their head about the legal health check, but they've stopped using the form, and it turns out that when that happens, they only still emanate the average amount of legal issues per client. So it became evident in the evaluation that using the form, the actual checklist, is crucial to success. There was some evidence that using the legal health check influences the community workers to engage with legal services and give support to that client to get to those legal services because they realise it's a time saving for them and the outcomes work for them. But we could have told the evaluators this: busy lawyers and busy community workers rarely use the form. They like to wing it or have it kind of in their head. When we did the trial sites, which for each of those trial sites there was a legal service and then a connected community service that they joined up with. You can see what their names are, but over the 3 months of the trial, so it was a short trial, 82 clients were assisted. They had the number of legal issues we indicated that they would, and of that 82 clients, 34 of them were referred. When they weren't referred, it was often because the community agency handled them in-house or referred them to another service that wasn't a legal service. Only 14 of the clients ended up attending an appointment with a lawyer, and where some of the best practice guidelines address that kind of dropout rate. And some clients had a community worker attend with them, which everyone in the pilot sites really like the community workers sitting in the room with them, but it's a big investment by the community agency often. You can see that in that table down the bottom, for instance, if the Red Cross service, that's a housing service, so it's not surprising that 21% of the clients had a housing issue, but also 84% of them had a debt issue, which wouldn't have been picked up at all by Red Cross, who were running a housing support. Similarly, Sunny Kids is a DV service, so it's not surprising that 78% of the clients that they did the legal health check with indicated they had a child and family relationship issue. But again, 50% of them had a debt issue, 61% of them had a housing issue. The housing issue one was interesting to me because although a lot of these women were women escaping domestic violence, so they were in temporary housing, the nature of the questions in the legal health check and about housing, but also about income, yielded some avenues for advocacy that the Sunny Kids domestic violence workers weren't thinking about, and so and led to housing outcomes for their clients. So it's the spread of the what have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 categories in the legal health check has been consistently seen as very helpful. It breaks down the various domains of legal need, and within those categories there are questions that really bring to the surface what the legal issue is. The findings from that evaluation are that yes, it increases referrals, it increases understanding, it's more effective all around. The community workers really surfaced more legal issues than they might have realised were in play. The lawyers often didn't then refer the legal health check, so they made an assumption that the legal health check had been filled in by the community service, and sometimes that created a problem. So the pathway in its ideal form works where the community worker completes the legal health check as a diagnostic tool, and then the lawyer goes through it again as a what are we going to do for you here rule. But I'll show you there are some nuances to that response, and the evaluation showed that there was a whole lot of things that would make it work better, and those they're down there, and we're going to look at those in this presentation. Here's some things that evaluation participants said. You can read that. You can go back and read those. But basically, when community workers use this approach, they really like it. So here we move on to the practice guidelines. These are all in the resources, so I'm more going to show them to you so that I hope that we can have some kind of a chat about it. There they are from the project report, and we've taken those and pulled those into all the different elements of the training. So the training in the first module is all about motivation. Why would you as a legal service want to do it this way, which is generally training that you would do within your own legal service. But when you come to the second part of the training, it's intended to be a guide to training that you do in conjunction with the community or health agency that you want to connect to. And we've said it's really just like a relationship. There's the phases that there would be in any healthy relationship. You have an intentional meeting, you have a get to know you phase, you have a phase where you make decisions and make plans, you have a phase where you keep nurturing the relationship, and you have a phase where you can review and change things. And to get through all those phases, you need lots of communication and some really good resources. Of course, our training isn't, we resisted being too prescriptive because every relationship is different. We're more trying to say don't miss out these phases. It's not going to be a quality, healthy, effective relationship if you miss out one of the phases. And the other thing that I couldn't stress enough is that these processes are to be done across different layers of each organisation. So it's good to have, and it's great to have the manager of your legal service talk to the manager of the community legal service. But in my experience, and I say this as a manager, managers often don't know what's happening on the ground or how things actually happen. So you also need to have admin staff talking to admin staff, and you need to have workers talking to workers and across those different layers, because it won't work if it's just implemented from the top and not realistically. So we've tried to give you some things that you might look at and use when you intentionally meet. Again, that's not just one meeting. It might be a series of meetings. It might start with a cup of coffee. It might be where you're at some network meeting, and it grows from there. But these are the things that eventually you need to have talked about before you decide that that a legal health check pathway is for you. And then you have a whole lot of get to know you sessions. In this one that I would just choose to highlight is professional differences. And I say there's more about this in the training modules, but we have to accept and understand that a bunch of social workers are going to have a completely different professional framework to a bunch of lawyers. They're words that we use like casework or file or conflicts are going to mean different things for those different professions. Similarly, health professionals of all kinds. So just nutting those things out, not being afraid of them, asking plenty of questions is crucial to working well. And under that I've got champions in each agency. So these things, like most things, really only work if there's someone in each agency that really is the go-to person for most of the when things go wrong, or the, how do we do this, or what form are we using. So that person is really important. There's a decision-making process where you really lock things down, and we tried to create a few resources around that, because this is the devil in the detail kind of aspect of really going in deep with another organisation. And so we created, and it's online, and it doesn't look this ugly online because Legal Aid here in Queensland made the resources look a bit nicer for us, but it's a collaborative service planning template. And at some point in your discussions and meetings with the community service, what you need to actually do is go through and find out if they're sitting with a client and they ask that first question, is anyone chasing you for money? The community workers have to decide what they're going to do if the client answers that question yes. So the community workers might say, well, actually we're going to send them first to our financial counsellors, or we have our own debt advocacy program. So that might be their preference. Or they might say, no, that's one we would refer. And then if they say that, the community lawyers need to out what they're going to do, and they might go, well, all we can do if we get that problem is give them a fact sheet. Or what we can do is actually we'll write some letters, we'll make some phone calls, we'll talk to third parties, so that each side of the partnership need to really make it very clear what will happen with that issue. And the more that kind of information can flow and be updated, the more effective the partnership will be, because one of the things that we all hate for ourselves and we hate for our clients is referral fatigue. But on the other hand, a referral that's effective will keep generating its own goodwill and its own effectiveness for future referrals. So some community workers, if once they go through this in legal health check, they might find whole sections of the legal health check that they're not even going to ask. And similarly, community lawyers might say, we're never going to provide the service to that question, but you'd be better off sending your client straight to basic rights. And so that needs to be noted, that although the community workers are going to send that client straight to basic rights for that particular issue. So that's how that template is designed, and it really is an effective tool. And then here is the most beautiful thing of all. Of course it's not, it's terribly ugly, but at some point you're going to have to sit down and nut out put yourself in the shoes of the client and think, okay, we filled out the legal health check, what is going to happen next physically? Is the community worker going to phone the legal service? Is the legal service already at, it really depends how you are going to work, but you're going to have to think through who do the phone calls get made to? Do they get made to admin? What do the admin at the legal service, what are they going to do with them? Is it going to get divided up between different lawyers in the service? All of those things are the kind of things that need to be nutted out. Who's going to do conflict checks? When is that going to be communicated? And this is the stuff that creates the rise or fall of these really intentional referral pathways. So lots of nurture is good because everyone will be working very hard on this relationship. So we have, for instance, a relationship of this kind in Cairns with a Aboriginal health service, which in itself is very large and complex, and we connect to a number of their programs. So one of the kind of nurture things we do is we run really a visible and strong part of their NAIDOC celebrations. There's lots of information sharing that happens in terms of celebrating stories. There's been some law reform. They did some stolen wages stuff together. They're the kind of things I'm talking about with nurturing, that you actually decide that it's, this pathway belongs to both of you. And then, of course, things need to be reviewed and changed because people change and focus change. In one of the places that ran one of the pilots as part of the evaluation, this pilot experience demonstrated that they really didn't, when it was DV clients, when DV clients had debts and fines issues, the service said we really don't offer them a useful response to that, and we'd like to. So what we need is more training. We need to think about how we're going to deliver the response that we need, and that can be part of the review and change process. We're almost at the chatty end, I hope. So I'm just kind of giving you a bit of a spread of the ways that this approach has been experimented with. At QPilch, I don't expect you to read all those words at the moment, but we've used this process to really target a client group that we identified through research as being in high need of legal services, which is young people transitioning from care. And we did a lot of consultation to see what was happening for that client group, who were they connecting to, were there any legal services in the space, and that informed the way that we designed the service. And we designed a service that was exactly a match for that client group, who aren't going to come to generally a shop front. They're not going to know they've got legal needs. They often have disabilities and communication challenges, and they can't be dealt with by a different face every time. We need to give them a really personalised, consistent service because of what they've experienced during their time in care. And we've developed a specific legal health check for them that we train the community workers or transition workers to use, and we're getting good results. It's a really tough client group, and but when we get results, they really have an impact because we are actually providing the offer of service to the one person for 4 years, so we get to have some continuity across their journey to independence. And with that, we have some protocols about directing some matters directly to other CLCs. I talked a bit about our service in Cairns that connects to the Aboriginal Health Service, and there's a lot of, if you have Indigenous services, there's of course a lot of consultation, community engagement to be done before that service can even start up, but it's a really effective service now, and that's led us to asking, well, actually we probably need a legal health check that's not a linear list with a lot of text. We probably need something that's more narrative style, much less text, uses Indigenous symbols, and so that's the step we're taking there. Northern Territory Legal Aid have been part of this journey with us, so we did a presentation to all the legal aids get together with their CLEs, and then they used the legal health check to do some experiments at a community engagement health focus festival. That worked really well for them, so then they decided to set up some outreach clinics that I think are connected to some health services I'm going to say Alice Springs, but I think it's Darwin. And so they use the legal health check postcard, which is a more simple resource. You can see that on the website. And they're also interested then in how could we do a Northern Territory version of the legal health check, an Indigenous friendly one. So that's the kind of experiments that you may be led to once you decide to really focus on the client's legal needs as they are, as opposed to the confines of your service remit. So here are my questions, and this is where you may be in a position to chat about these, or you may just want to ask questions, and these questions are in the training modules, but these are the questions, some of the questions you're going to need to think about if you're going to use this kind of approach, and to discuss within your centre, which is really what are you currently offering your clients. How much is it about them and how much is it about you? Which community service do your clients connect to? So could you connect to them at an earlier point, at a more useful point, rather than waiting till they discover you? Asking yourselves which legal health check would be the right one for our clients, or in fact do we need to use one and adapt it? We're very happy with that kind of approach. Are there other legal services that should be involved? In our service at the Indigenous Health Service in Cairns, we connect very intentionally to the Family Violence, Indigenous Family Violence Service and the ATSLs, and often it's kind of an on-the-spot referral, or sometimes they attend the service at the same time to make a really strong connection across legal services for the client. And I think it starts with this final question, which is, what is one change that you could make that would make it easier for your clients to find you? So that's really all of the content I want to offer you, and I'm wondering if there are questions about those or about anything that we've talked about.
Thanks, Sue. It's James back here, folks. A reminder about the ways that you can ask questions. You can type a question into the questions box, or you can press that button that looks like a hand on the control panel. We'll be able to unmute your microphone and you'll be able to ask a question that way. So one of the important kind of precursor points that you made early in the presentation was around the right type of clients.
Yes.
And maybe it's a piece of work that comes before all of this, but identifying the right type of clients that your centre should be looking for.
Yes.
What are some of the key pieces of work that you've used in the pilot sites and in other pieces of work that have led to the use of the legal health check to identify those right clients?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is you can do, there are legal needs tools out there to determine, say, the legal needs of your community, and they are useful. The legal health check, what it does that's distinctive is it will show you what an individual client's needs are. So I guess there's three things. You may already be offering a service to a particular kind of client, say a DV client, and you might want to think, well, what actually other legal needs do our clients have? We may not be able to address them, but it's helpful to know about them. It's certainly helpful for the client to recognise that those are legal needs. So that's that kind of client, a client that you already know something about them, but they already see you, but you're finding out that they actually have multiple legal needs. So there's that kind of client. There's clients that are typically in all the lists of highly vulnerable clients, and all of our funding is now tied to us delivering work to those kind of clients. And in particular, I think I already mentioned, there are clients that cross a number of those domains. They are people who are disabled and single mums and live regionally. That kind of cross client will always be ripe for this kind of intervention. But the other thing I would say is because it's an approach that requires a trusted intermediary to be successful, you are thinking about clients that can connect to some kind of community service, because then you're really relying on there being more resources in the picture than just yourself. And I'm conscious that, especially in regional services, that can be part of the trouble, that there are less community services out there. But we have a strong connection to a Canadian centre that uses these resources. They legal health check resources. Some of them they've developed their own versions, and they've done really interesting evaluations of them as well. And they will connect to a very, very large range of community partners, ones, churches and local people doing small things. So it really, I think you should be very broad in your thinking about who you connect with, so long as they're regularly seeing the kind of clients that have the kinds of needs you want to assist with, and they are willing to work with you in partnership. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, it does. A reminder that you can ask questions by typing a question into the questions box or by putting up your hand. So you raised the Canadian experience,
yes,
and was particularly interested that they use consumers sometimes as the trusted intermediary, so other people living in poverty or in homelessness to administer a form of legal health check.
Yes.
I wonder if you can reflect on that as a kind of innovative and in some ways a little bit scary model of using legal health check.
There's a few different, I certainly have a few different thoughts about that. I've been a bit scared sometimes when bureaucrats have come to me with schemes that pay vulnerable consumers to market things to their peers. So I have some nervousness about that approach, and about what I think you need to really, really understand that client group and the role of that consumer before you adopted that approach. But it could be that a community itself recognises some of its peers as community liaison people, or have some role that they already have that function, and then that would be fine. Yeah, but I think it would be at a case-by-case basis.
You talked about other legal services being involved, and I saw that you referred to some of the specialist statewide services, for example.
Yep.
Bringing legal aid or the private profession or other players in. Yep. Have you used them have you used those kind of linkages much in the test sites, and what are your reflections on showing as broad a group to choose from?
Most of the information about that comes from our own experience at QPilch, in that, of course, all, with very rare exceptions, all QPilch services are engaging pro bono lawyers. And when we first developed Legal Health Check, we thought of three different stakeholders, which was the clients, the community workers, and the pro bono lawyers. In that, there are different ways to use pro bono lawyers. You can use them for the skill set they already have, or you can use them for the sheer numbers and resource that they offer, in which case you're actually skilling them up. And so the legal health check has a role in that. So pro bono, there's no problem at all. In terms of other services, QPILCH intentionally has, when we, for instance, we don't do crime, for instance, so when a client indicates in a legal health check that they have a criminal issue, we will create a brief to legal aid, and we have a protocol with legal aid that makes that very smooth and effective for everyone. In the pilot sites, in Queensland, it was rolling at the pilot program was rolling out at the same time as our tenancy legal service was becoming national and had a different kind of intake process. So it was actually quite good. It was timely for the community agencies to go, well, when do we get a client straight onto the tenant's hotline, which is the way it kind of worked, or when do we send them to you? So that worked effectively and brought efficiencies for the people involved. The connection to legal aid can be tricky if legal aid, if you're kind of connecting to legal aid generally. So I would say, as a general rule across any services, don't expect a disembodied legal health check to yield any significant benefits for anybody. A legal health check is only a connection tool. It's a diagnostic and a connection tool, so it has to come with a body attached.
Another question that's come through, and I think that's a bit of a Dorothy Dixon, so thanks, Mark. Could it be characterised as an holistic approach to serving vulnerable people in our society through community legal centres?
Yes, and we add value to what community services do. If you've looked at the videos which are directed at community agencies, one of our key ideas is that community agencies want to get outcomes for their clients, but the legal needs will often sabotage the housing or the stability outcome that the agency wants, and really, unless they embrace the legal aspect of the problem, it's going to be a problem for the client. So yes, holistic in many directions.
So one of the great things about the way this project has evolved is the resources that QPILCH then, right now, and its partners have put together on that website.
Yes.
My sense is that a CLC out there could just kind of pick up those resources and run with it.
Yes.
Where do you think they should or could contact you to get the benefit of your expertise, or is everything that they need on the website? Pretty
much. I think we haven't changed over the emails there, but they'll still be effective. You can always contact me because I'm quite interested in just keeping a bit of a sense of what's happening in the world, so I'm very happy to receive emails about it. And they can also contact NACLC. So the website is co-managed with NACLC, and Chantel there at NACLC is very happy to receive requests and pass them on. So for instance, we recently had a request from a regional CLC in New South Wales that couldn't download given their dodgy data regionally, they couldn't download the videos for their workers. So we put them on USBs, and we're happy to do that and send you a USB. And a lot of workers, a lot of CLCs, they seem to start with using the tools that we've got as a way to begin engaging with their potential clients and community services. So they might use the postcards and show one of the really 2-minute videos, and so they might visit a service and connect that way. Or even some of them have run like shopping centre booth kind of things where they will have, they're high quality videos, not your standard CLC dodgy do-it-yourself. So they are good for that kind of thing. And the postcards, which on the back of them have 3 or 4 really clear questions which make sense to your average punter, then so that's a good kind of beginning way to use the resources.
Can I ask, Sue, are there community organisations that you've approached to start one of these processes and not gone ahead with, and if so, why? without naming names,
yes.
but you know, what makes a good community service partner and what makes a not so good community?
They all have different flavours, of course, but there are community service partners that aren't really investing a lot in their own clients. They're really counting numbers, and so even if you even if you have a presence there, they will put no effort into directing clients to you, or in fact the thing that we really want them to do is we want them to be asking the clients these questions themselves, knowing that certainly in the housing and homelessness sector, and I suspect this is true across the nation, those services have to complete assessment, online assessment with their clients about all sorts of things, and a lot of those questions correlate to legal health check questions. So, but there certainly are community agencies that are not particularly well run, but you'll find that out for yourself. So where you, and that in the get to know you kind of part of the manual, those are the questions you really need to talk about. How many clients do you see? How long do you spend with them in each session? How many months are you willing to have that client as a part of your community service? Those are the questions which will give you a sense of whether it's a good service to connect to. Yeah, because they definitely yield the most effective outcomes for clients.
Can I ask if the legal health check has changed the way in which you interact with some of those community services in terms of feedback loops on individual client circumstances, or so those kind of general practice-based things? What have you learnt from using legal health checks that's kind of changed your general approach to practice management, and particularly working with vulnerable clients who in turn work with community services?
Yeah. Well, I guess the traditional approach to community services, working with community services in the CLC sector when I was starting this kind of stuff, was either we would try and find who we could refer the client to for an immediate crisis need. So there was that kind of that stuff. Now it's must be hit 5 o'clock because my brain just switched off for the other thing it was. But how much those services were willing to invest in their client's legal need is something that really can change. And we have services that now they do a really thorough legal health check with every client that they see. They bring the client physically to a service. That's an outstanding kind of level of investment that they're making, and because they see that it yields outcomes. And the other thing in Queensland, I would say, well, certainly in our southeast corner of it, is the recognition that a good question to ask a client is anyone chasing you for money? That has, I'm delighted to say, has very high recognition rates among community workers, whereas they used to not ask the question at all, or ask, do you want to see the lawyers, or ask, technical questions like about debt. So just finding what a useful question is has changed our approach.
Terrific. As you said, it is nudging 5 o'clock, Sue. I don't think we've got any more questions that have come through. Can I, on behalf of the people clapping and cheering wildly at computers across the country, thank Sue for showcasing what is a fantastic set of tools for community legal centres and community organisations, delivering great outcomes, I think, and I'd really encourage you to check out the website, check out the resources, and think about how these tools or these ideas might help your work in community legal centres across the country. Getting some thank you messages coming through, including from Melbourne. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Sue, for a fantastic presentation. Good night all.
Good night.